fire chiefs say that they're really stretched to the limit and running out of water. What have you got to say to that? Have you no response to that? Do you owe citizens an apology for being absent while their homes were burning? Do you regret cutting the fire department budget by millions of dollars, Madam Mayor? Have you nothing to say today?
That's kind of despicable. There's really no excuse for this.
Well, the point about DEI is not that gay, black or female people are unfit to be firefighters. It's about a systemic misjudgment of priorities. It's about a state that spent $24 billion to end homelessness, ended up with more people living on the streets. It's about a state that suffers dozens of massive fires every single year, but leaves its biggest city with empty hydrants in the middle of the worst fire in its history. And stuck in the middle of all this are the people whose lives are being turned upside down, including many of my friends and neighbours. I have a home in Beverly Hills. This crisis is nowhere near over, and when it is, they will expect answers and change.
So if you guys don't know what's happening, he's referring to the LA wildfires. Please pray for everyone out there who's going through these type of terrible events. This was, in my opinion, or in my sight, unpredictable for 99% of the country. We couldn't even have, conceptualized an entire community being set ablaze. I don't know the California environment that well, but from what he's saying is that it's extremely predictable in Los Angeles, and that apparently from his point of view, the California government was not spending their money the right way, that they could have avoided this. And he's going to refer to how trying to focus on, I guess, DEI policies negatively impacted how these fires were dealt with. So I'm not going to waste any more time. I just want to hear what he has to say about that. I'm going to give my opinions at the end. Let me know what you guys think. Let's go.
Way to debate. I'm joined by the host of Keeping It Real podcast, Gillian Michaels, by Amala Ekpunobi, who's the host of The Amala Show, by the Night School host, Mark Lamont Hill, and the activist influencer, Michael Mez. Well, welcome to all of you. Let me start with you, if I may, Mark Lamont Hill, because you've been getting into it with lots of people about the whole issue of DEI and whether that's had any involvement here or whatever. What's your overview here? I mean, do you think it's played any part? Are you uncomfortable about the advert I just showed with people who are sort of, looks like to me like they're playing the DEI card to justify their position?
Those are two different questions. I'll answer them both, though. The first thing is, do I love the commercial? No, I think the commercial misses the mark for several reasons. And it doesn't get to the heart of why you would want a DEI effort at the fire department. At the end of the day, the most important thing, as is the case whenever you have any kind of intervention like this, is that qualified people are there and that everyone has a fair shake at a high quality job, that no one is underqualified or unqualified for the job. In terms of the fire, which is your first question, I don't think that DEI has anything to do with these fires. I think there's plenty of blame to go around, and a lot of it has to do with Democrats, Democratic mayor, Democratic governor, Democratic councils. I mean, there's a lot of criticism to go around. There's a lot of targets here, but DEI to me isn't the issue here. I'm more concerned with how the police were overfunded and fire departments were underfunded. I'm interested in climate change and having that conversation. We have to have a conversation about the kind of homes we have and the kind of homes we build these days. There are lots of things to talk about, but I don't think DEI is the blame here.
Okay, Gillian.
Before they get too deep, I'm not going to comment on the DEI topic just yet, but I do like one thing he said. I'm going to refer to the type of homes they have in LA. My thing is this. If you know the community is prone to wildfires, why are the exteriors of the homes majority wood? I feel like there are other materials that you can use that are less prone to wildfires, such as maybe bricks or maybe clay homes. Obviously, you have to use wood in your home. You can't build an entire home with no wood, especially on the interior. But when I was looking at the homes, they look like regular wood houses. And I'm just thinking the architecture choice is just a little questionable for me. But let's continue. That's a little unrelated, but let's continue.
You lost a home in a previous fire in LA in 2018. You've had to evacuate your own mother in these fires. I've got to say, my place is in Beverly Hills, which thankfully has not been hit yet, although the next 48 hours will be pretty crucial, I think, as to what happens, because the Santa Ana winds are going to come back with a vengeance, we're told. And if they head northeast, as they did a couple of days ago, and they jump the 405 freeway, then everyone in Los Angeles knows what that means for Bel Air, Beverly Hills, and potentially everywhere else in the city. So these are pretty scary times for everyone who has a property there. What do you feel? I mean, as someone who's watched this play out before and suffered a horrible loss yourself, what do you feel about the blame game, the accountability part?
Well, I think that leadership in California is absolutely accountable for this. They are the ones who are in charge of mitigating these kinds of disasters. And I want to play complete devil's advocate here. Let's go with, we do know that California is prone to wildfires. Santa Ana winds, we all know this. And I'm not a climate change expert here, but if we play that card, and I'm more than happy to do it, you should have been that much more prepared. And we know for a fact that if we were doing prescribed controlled burns, forestry cleanup, creating fire breaks, if we had the reservoir filled that was uphill from the Palisades, the one closest to the Palisades, we probably could have put that fire out more effectively by getting it done sooner rather than days later. If you manage the state's water more efficiently, and there are so many issues with that, considering how many billions of gallons go to growing shelled nuts. It's like 80% of the state's water, which is 2% of the state's GDP. If you reprioritized where you're putting the state's budget instead of giving homeless people drug kits and maybe invested in desalination plants. I mean, there are so many things that we can talk about in this episode that are grossly negligent and would have had a massive impact on saving lives and saving people's homes.
Yeah, I mean, my feeling, Michael, I'll bring you in here, is having had a home in LA for 15 years and lived and worked there for 20 years, this issue of the fires has been ever present. I mean, the big fear has always been another big earthquake, but everyone's been very aware that there's been a lot of fires and they seem to have been getting more prevalent, not less prevalent.
So it seems as though this issue has been around for a very, very, very long time. Obviously, every single state within the United States has their main issue. I'm assuming this is California's main issue, or at the lowest level, the Los Angeles area's main issue. So if you did know this, there is obviously evidence that somebody's unqualified. Whether or not you want to say it's because of an equity and inclusion program, whether or not you want to say it's because of their state government, somebody somewhere did not do the job to the best of the ability. Because from what I'm hearing, even from the left side in this conversation, is that this could have been better prepared for. I'm not going to say unavoidable, but it could have been prepped for way better. They were running out of water. That's insane. How do you... Okay, let's continue.
And everyone's been like, well, what's being done to protect everybody? And there was perhaps a false complacency that stuff was being done that meant this stuff we're seeing now couldn't have happened. But it has. And yet, as I say that, I'm mindful of a clip of Joe Rogan that's doing the rounds on social media, which is from last summer, in which he talks about a previous conversation he had with a firefighter. Let's take a listen.
I talked to a fireman once. This is one of the reasons that freaked me out. And he was telling me, he goes, dude, one day, he goes, it's just going to be the right wind and fire's going to start in the right place and it's going to burn through LA all the way to the ocean. And there's not a fucking thing we can do about it. I go, really? He goes, yeah, we just get lucky. He goes, we get lucky with the wind. He goes, but if the wind hits the wrong way, it's just going to burn straight through LA and there's not going to be a thing we can do about it. Because these fires are so big, dude. When they're talking about like thousands of acres that are burning simultaneously with like 40-mile-an-hour winds. And the wind's just blowing embers through the air, and those embers are landing on roofs, and those houses are going up, and they're landing on bushes, and those bushes are going up, and everything's dry. And once it happens in a way where it's so spread out that there's nothing they can do.
Now, I mean, Michael, very prescient there. So people can't claim they didn't think this might happen. Literally, Joe Rogan, the biggest podcaster of the world, is openly telling everybody what a firefighter told him was likely to happen, and that was a few months ago. What is your take on what you think has really been behind all this?
Well, I think that in terms of what actually caused this fire, we're still trying to figure that out. But it's clear that LA is a city that's built in a fire zone. Wildfires are endemic to the land. And we need to take that into account with the way that we govern this city and the way that we budget for emergency services and fire prevention. And I think that the city leaders do need to be held accountable for managing and preventing fires in a realistic way. We only spent $42 million per year on fire prevention. And I think we need to talk about how that budget is being allocated compared to other spending, like billions of dollars going to policing and the repairs on a reservoir that should have taken a week have taken more than a year. I think that those types of things absolutely should be coming under the magnifying glass. But I think that the point that Joe Rogan made in that clip is right.
And it's crazy because the amount of homes that were lost, and guys, these were $1 million homes. I was looking at the listing. The average home price was around $5 to $6 million in that area. I don't remember the name of the area. And there are very prominent celebrities who lost their homes. So my thing is this. The amount of money it will cost to, let's say, rebuild the homes and rebuild the businesses costs more than $40 million. I think in that area, $40 million might give you 4 or 5 homes at most. It's going to cost billions to rebuild that area. Not even including the debt that people will have to pay back on their mortgages from the businesses or homes that they lost. So if this is the case and you know that you're in a fire zone, why wouldn't you try to put extra steps ahead to avoid this? I don't understand. You budgeted $40 million, but this is LA. $40 million is like 3-4 homes. That's not, I don't really understand. Some people in LA have homes that cost more than $40 million. I don't know, man. It really confuses me how something like this was allowed to happen. And this is just kind of sad.
Me from a fire. End.
You're misrepresenting the issue, though. No one is saying that the best qualified people shouldn't be hired. The issue is, again, there are 10 people in a room.
Yeah.
They're going to hire 8 of them. The first 6 they've hired have been white men.
Yeah.
Of the remaining people, there are qualified white men and qualified black men and qualified black women. The issue historically in that department has been, even when the women have been qualified, even when the black men have been qualified, they still have not gotten hired. It's not that black people have gotten not hired and they're unqualified. It's they've been qualified and not hired. And so they're trying to respond to that by being intentional about saying, hey, let's bring in some qualified black people to augment the qualified white men as well. So no one wants an unqualified firefighter. You know what I mean? No one wants an unqualified surgeon. But if you keep not hiring qualified black people, we got to do something about it.
Okay, let me bring Gillian in because obviously the LA Mayor, Karen Bass, is a black woman. I've got to say, of all the people in officialdom that I've seen since this disaster started, she seems...
Before they get too deep into this debate about the mayor, I want to just make this comment, and this is specifically regarding LA. He said, let's say there's 10 people in a room and you hire 8 of them, you're going to make sure that at least 2 of the 8 are black or are women, and 6 of the 8, because the first 6 were white. And he said that qualified black people or qualified minorities were getting ignored for so long of a time that they had to make sure that minorities are being hired now. When it comes to LA, why don't they just hire everyone? Let's say there are 10 people in a room. Why don't you just hire all 10? And the reason I say that is because look what's happening right now. They're getting inmates to help fight the fires because, ironically, they don't have enough people to fight the fires, even though black people aren't getting hired. Let's say black people aren't getting hired. Your response shouldn't necessarily be a DEI program. Your response in this situation should be, we need to hire everyone who wants to work for us. I don't even understand how this is a real debate, because it seems as though the fire department in LA is underfunded and they have a lower amount of workers. They should be looking at anyone who wants to work for them.
Seems to me to be the most woefully incompetent. One, when it started, there had already been warnings that there may be a big fire issue coming. And she gets on a plane and she goes all the way to Africa to the inauguration of the new president of Ghana. Now, this is someone who the New York Times has established 2 years ago, actually said on the record while campaigning to be mayor Not only would I, of course, live here, but I wouldn't travel internationally. The only places I would go would be DC, Sacramento, San Francisco, and New York in relation to Los Angeles. And yet there she is at the inauguration of an African president while her city's burning. And when she came back, she was jumped by a very good journalist from Sky News here in the UK, David Blevins. And the response was pathetic. Let's take a look.
Madam Mayor, David Blevins from Sky News in the UK. Fire chiefs say that they're really stretched to the limit and running out of water. What have you got to say to that? Have you no response to that? Do you owe citizens an apology for being absent while their homes were burning? Do you regret cutting the fire department budget by millions of dollars, Madam Mayor? Have you nothing to say today?
I mean, I'm sorry, Gillian.
That's kind of despicable. There's really no excuse for this. Whether or not she could have, gave the response that people would appreciate, the least you can do in this situation is send your condolences to the people who lost their lives, or at least send your hopes and wishes and prayers for them. Just to say nothing, I don't agree with that. I understand why she didn't say anything, because at the end of the day, she doesn't want to be taken out of context. So she probably thought in the moment, I'm going to wait to give an official statement on this. But this was terrible. People's homes are burning down, and you're in your place. You are the leader of this, and you say nothing at all. Like, you literally say nothing. That's crazy. I hope they don't defend this.
I mean, that was just so pathetic, wasn't it? I mean, she's the mayor of Los Angeles. Say something.
It's absolutely outrageous. And again, I can't speak to the DEI component because I don't really know the history of who they did or didn't hire. I'm currently under the impression that the fire chief wanted more bodies, no matter what color, what gender, or what sexual orientation. And if I'm wrong about that, please educate me. With that said, Karen Bass is incompetent. I don't care if it's because she's a woman of color. She's just flat out incompetent. When your fire chief writes you a letter in December of 2024, after all of northern Malibu has just burned down again, and says, do not cut my budget, it will be a catastrophe, you don't cut the budget. I'm absolutely outraged and disgusted. It is gross negligence, period. And then you have nothing to say when you're questioned about it. What are you doing in Ghana? You are a mayor. You are not an ambassador.
That's
you
ridiculous.
don't work for the federal government. What is going on?
Yeah,
I mean, we could point to so many of these things. It's just outrageous.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think she's been completely incompetent and exposed as incompetent. In fact, all her public utterances make me cringe. Let me bring Michael back in here.
Completely.
I mean, I want to play a clip, Michael. This is from the fire department chief, Kristen Crowley, who, as things stand, to me, sounds the most credible of all of them when she speaks. Let's take a listen.
Did the city of Los Angeles fail you and your department and our city?
It's my job to stand up as a chief and exactly say, justifiably, what the fire department needs to operate to meet the demands of the community.
Did they fail you?
That is our job, and I tell you, that's why I'm here. So let's get us what we need so our firefighters can do their jobs.
Did they fail you?
Yes.
I mean, she couldn't be clearer there, and I believe her. I mean, no one has actually refuted what she said, and she hasn't been fired. So, Michael, I'm doing the maths with my old journalism hat on, and it's coming up pretty well for her and pretty badly for the elected officials.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah, there's no defending this, and there's no defending this. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'm LFR JoJo, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.